same end, I think that functional animism is another pillar of magic that people don't dive deep enough into. Because it's one thing to say, the rowan tree has a spirit, but there's nothing to say the number 13 has a spirit. Another thing in Conjure in America is you will make pact with an unlucky thing. Like 13, she's my number. She's good to me, is what you'll hear. And then you'll wear the number 13 on a ring or a belt buckle or something. Very, very like traditional hoodoo man kind of thing. But in that way, anytime the number 13 appears, you can conjure it. You can use that magic. And that magic's only lucky for you because it siphons the luck of other people. And that is also a very witchcrafty kind of thing where you will move forces around luck and beauty and health and intelligence. I've also referred to it, I heard it referred to by an African acquaintance of mine as stealing someone's stars.
Welcome to the Spirit Box podcast, where we explore folklore, magic, the world of the spirits, and everything in between. Today we welcome the Hex Doctor, Alexander Moore. Alexander is a practicing esotericist with over 2 decades of active experience in several cult systems, including Solomonic Magic, Conjure, and other folk practices and traditional witchcraft. He is proud to provide coaching, mentorship, and divination for occultists who are interested in taking their magic and their lives to the next level in a changing world. From a magical family, Alexander has been practicing magic from an early age. In a candid discourse, Alexander outlines his view on the core pillars of magic from a practical perspective and the necessity of being precise with your magic. And he begs the question, if you're not using magic to make a better, more enjoyable life, what's the point? It's a frank and honest conversation and something I think you're going to take a lot from and enjoy. In the Plus show, we get into the need to do more magic and practice regularly. Alexander talks more about the type of techniques he uses. He discusses how cursing has changed in the last 10 years and the precautions people should be aware of. Then he takes us through his thoughts and experiences on gaining and working with familiar spirits. To close out, Alexander gives his advice and experiences on going to the crossroads. If you want to hear the Plus show, simply go to the links in my Linktree in the show notes, find the Patreon and sign up, and you'll get the Plus show and every other Plus show that I've done to date, including all the bonus shows and everything that is on the Patreon. There's 3 years worth of stuff there, so pretty good value for your dollar. Now, on the 16th and 17th of December, I'll be talking about the history of the jinn, the folklore, the different types of magic, ruqya, and my own experience of brushing up against the jinn in Delhi. This event is hosted by the House of Zophiel and it will take place in the north of England at Unstone Grange in Derbyshire. Again, the details are in the show notes below. Hope to see you there. Okay, let's get on with the show. Alexander Moore, you're very welcome to the Spirit Box. Nice to have you on the show.
Great to be here.
Brilliant. So we got introduced by a mutual friend, Mademoiselle Vendredi. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a blind date kind of show. But we'll see how we get on. Could you introduce yourself to the listeners and tell them a little bit about yourself and your practice?
So my name is Alexander Moore. I go by the Hex Doctor on Instagram. I'm the other half of practicaloccult.com. I do magic for a living. I am an educator in magic, a personal mentor. You can pay for coaching and whatnot. I do a bunch of classes on how to be better at magic, and my specific focus in that is how to actively make your life very good, not just better, but very good. And one of my active focuses is pushing people to do better at magic, to focus on it like an actual craft with the same standard that you'd approach any other skill, which is, I think, a thing lacking fairly aggressively in magic today.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Yeah, it definitely seems to be the case. Not that I'm an expert in anything, but like, yeah, it seems to be kind of the watermark is very, very inconsistent. Now, just before we hit record, you were telling me about your background, which was absolutely fascinating. I don't think I've met anyone on the show who actually has a similar background to yours. So would you mind telling the listeners that?
Yeah, sure. So my folks are magicians, both of them. And as I was telling you, that isn't just to say like, oh yeah, my mom owned tarot cards and my dad fucked around in the Golden Dawn or some other similarly useless shit. It was like they actively really do, present tense do magic, and they always have. And so growing up with that, I was told in no uncertain terms, this is the most important skill you can possibly learn. From this, anything can happen. If you make a mistake in life, you can fix it with this. If there's something you otherwise could not succeed at, this will make you be able to succeed. And I was raised intentionally with parents who proved it to me. They didn't just say, oh, this is real. I mean, obviously, as a small child, they told me things, but as soon as I hit about 13, they would, we would do magic together. We would see the same things, experience the same things, talk to the same spirits. I would be told how to do certain spells. They would fucking work because they do. You don't mind if I curse on your show, do you?
Not at all. Go first.
Fantastic, because I got a problem with that. All right, so but no, I mean it was a really awesome experience because at no point did I have the burden of proof. Like as someone who educates occultists for a big part of his living at this point, I see that in my students where some of them will say things to me, honestly saying like, man, man, I'm trying really hard at this, but I just don't viscerally believe it. I just don't viscerally know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is really what I hope it to be. I was lucky and I'm thankful truly every day that I never had that problem. I grew up being told you are magical. Not just like you do this, but you are that thing, and shown how to prove it to myself time and again. Now, when you're a hormonal teenager with real magic, you get up to some fuckery, and I certainly certainly did. Um, one example that I do like to tell people is I'm a big D&D player, right? Big tabletop role playing guy, and I'm 13 years old. I worked really hard to put my D&D game together. This fucking kid named Kyle, he ruined my game by making a comic relief character, and I cursed the shit out of him. I mean, I obliterated this dude. And I mean, I was like a child. He was a child. And I'm like, I don't want him to have a good life ever. And every now and again, I'm reminded that, like, this man is still alive and his life is still terrible. And all I have to say is, like, you shouldn't have made that character in my game, Kyle. If you ever see this,
Yeah.
Kyle,
Fuck you,
I'd do it
Kyle.
again. I would do it again. But truly, to that end, like,
Yeah.
it is a really interesting experience having grown up that way, having lived that life, because you know, I've always sought different training, other mentors, and I've been extremely fortunate to be told really young, you can use magic to find other teachers. Which is the thing that when I tell certain students of mine, they're like, it's like a mind blown kind of moment. Like, I can use magic to get more magic. And it's like, yeah, you can and you should all the time. But so yeah, that's basically my background. And I found myself here doing it for a living.
Fantastic. Thank you. And in those kind of early moments where your parents were guiding you and helping you develop your magic, can you, apart from the hexing the fuck out of poor Kyle, um, what was the other kind of like quintessential moment of like, oh, this works, or that kind of moment where it stopped being kind of like a faith, and then actually not an act of faith, not a faith, an act of faith, and into something that was like, okay, this is fucking real.
So like my father's a Solomonic magician and he's a jeweler as a job. So he has all of the stuff. He had all the kit. The only thing we didn't have was the lion skin belt, which you don't need. You don't need it. You can use other protective amulets in place of the lion skin belt. But I had everything. The garage was set up for that in my childhood home. And I remember doing Goetia with my father and us seeing the same spirit at the same time. And the very, very directly seeing it and having that shared experience with my old man. I mean, it was very much like, because again, it's like the same guy who mowed the lawn, the same guy who sits at the dinner table with the family, the same guy with the no shade to my father, but the same guy with the beer gut who comes home from work tired. you had that bond with him because you were just like that was real, that really happened, and we both asked something of that spirit, and we both got what we asked for, and he would tell me, ask for something that you really want. What would you love to have? Not what do you want, but what would you love to have? And so, beholding, because in my case, it was a physical thing that I wanted, holding it in my hands and seeing the uncanny way that it came to me. And I had it in my bedroom, the thing that I asked for. It was just there all the time. And I would look at it for years, all the way through my childhood, all the way up until college. I would look at that thing every day and be like, I, I did that. Like we did that together.
Fantastic. I find it so intriguing, and it's so unique. Like I've really not aware of many people who have that same kind of formative upbringing. I think it's fantastic. Yeah.
It,
What
it's
a
actually not as
fantastic.
rare as you think it is.
Really? Okay.
I mean, obviously, I don't know anybody, but
Yeah.
I'm not the only one that I know that grew
Yeah.
up in a
Fair enough.
magical family.
Yeah. Fair
Um,
enough.
I certainly won't name the name because
Yeah.
this is a dear childhood friend, but there's a family that my father was friends with that worked for the Shenyang Divine Performing Arts Orchestra, and if you ever wonder why their billboards are everywhere, it's because they use fucking magic. Like there's a talisman inside every one of them. But
Right. Okay.
but the thing is, like, so it's out there. They're just not gonna, because that's another thing I think is funny. I've been told this by other people who were brought up as magicians. A lot of them will say things like, I use this to build my life. This has become your life.
Yeah.
And in my case, it really has because, we live in an era where we're afforded the wonderful luxury of fascination
Hmm.
in this. Like, you're able to be, even if you don't make this your literal living, you live in an era where you can go make friends with someone in another country, really make the right connections, find the right inroads to their
Hmm.
witchcraft or their magic or their traditions. You can go. We have an unprecedented access of online mentorship, classes you can
Hmm.
buy, things you can train. Most people who grew up in families like this learned magic and then used it to just have a great life. And that's also
Hmm.
true of like, and this is a new agey thing that it sounds like that I champion all day. But there were so many psychic development programs that got their footing in the 70s and 60s, like the Silva method, for example. My dad, Goetia guy, right? He dragged me to a Silva seminar when I was a kid, and I thought it
Hmm.
was the dumbest shit. Day one, I was like, I do fucking magic. I summon demons. I'm hardcore. By the end of that weekend, I'm like, holy shit,
The
this made
Sylvia
sense.
mind control method.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
It is, but the thing
Yeah.
is, that half the people there were
Yeah.
business people who were sent there by their like
Hmm.
their business mentors,
Right.
and some of them were like, "I don't believe in this shit. This is dumb. I don't even." I mean, at the end of the weekend, everyone was like, "I can do psychometry now. I
Mm.
can tell people's motivations. I can do whatever." And so, like, I think that people, and this is a thing I also trumpet a lot. I think that people neglect psychic training
Hmm.
uh, today. I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of like tantra and practices like that because cultivating yourself is is second to none. Now, I would also make the argument that a lot of traditions, when you go off the beaten path, have that factor in it. They just use different language,
Right.
and people love to make the perfect the enemy of the good,
Hmm.
in the sense that they think to themselves like, oh, well, if I go here to this other place, I learn all these things, um, then I'll really have it. But until I can't do anything. When I'm over here, like, well, actually, having gone to a lot of other places and learned a lot of other things, nothing substitutes having a one-on-one mentor. Like nothing does. It's just a reality.
Right.
But you can buy the equivalent training of most things if you are a self-starter.
Hmm.
You're really motivated. You can train yourself up pretty decent. But anyway, to the original point, yeah, most people who grew up like that you'll never know. They're just out there being, but there are ways you can tell. You look at someone and you're like, wow, their wife is frighteningly attractive, and they're a potato with eyes. That's fascinating. Why is that? Or like bad things don't happen to them, and bad things happen to people who try to make bad things happen to them all the time.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So and then if you look at like uncanny examples of success in certain industries, and if you know, right? Like you'll be like, oh, that's interesting jewelry you have on there that are Solomonic pentacles or
Yeah.
whatever it might be. So, or or another thing that a friend of mine always brought up, another occultist friend of mine, where he made friends with this person at his job because he was like, wow, you take a lot of trips to Africa and you're not African. Why do you do that? The country known as Africa, right? No, but for real, he was like, why do you do that? And he's like, oh, I just go visit some people, and eventually he was like, you go to learn magic there, don't you? Like I see you, they're just tells, like
Mm.
if you know, you know. But yeah, it's not. That's the thing. I mean, so when people look at my background, and as thankful as I am for it, I always want to preface like it does not make me capable of things that
Hmm.
other people are not capable of. I had an earlier start, but I also had fewer resources than exist today.
Right.
So to anyone listening who even felt slightly down, it's like I get this a lot. I get emails about this a lot. Like, well, I didn't grow up in a special situation, or I haven't been doing this for 22 years like you have, or whatever. Cool. How long does it take to get good at anything? You pick up a guitar, you can be in a band in 6 months if you're diligent. You really can. You won't be amazing, but you'll be competent.
Yeah.
Same with magic. If you really want it, there are things you can do to go get it.
So what would you say are the fundamental elements people should be looking at if they're starting out? What are the fundamental like pillars?
Oh shit. Okay, so you want to train your psychism and do subtle body cultivation. That way you can see spirits, learn to astral project, which is hard as dick. Anyone who says it's not is lying. Learn to lucid dream, learn to do all these things, right? Do the hard work that'll pay off later.
Hmm.
And then honestly, have the willingness to just try a bunch of shit. Have the heart to admit what you want out of life, because the world's not getting any easier. We're in a global economic recession right now. It's not going to go away, if it ever does, for a long time.
Hmm.
So whoever you are learning magic, you need to adapt your magic to that circumstance, which is why a lot of magic from the so-called developing world, not that I think that they need any help to develop as people, but is becoming more popular. Why people have moved back to folk magic in a huge way, why people have moved to witchcraft in a huge way.
Yeah.
American Conjure, for example, which I separate mostly from like the Lucky Mojo brand of hoodoo. Not that there's anything terribly wrong with it, but I think that they miss the witchcraft in it. And by that I mean, if you read the early like Hyatt material, you'll see Hyatt being like, there are like root workers, and then there were fucking witches. And all the stuff he says about witchcraft is how hag writing and shape shifting and all the stuff that like witches in the whole world do, the universal ubiquitous nature of that thing. There's a conjure thing where you go to the crossroads and you steal lightning from the devil. And the lightning you steal is the power. Right. It's the crossroads initiation that you see in so many cultures across the
Hmm.
whole world. And it takes various forms, of course. There are many ways to do it regionally, even within the United States, they change. Being willing to do shit like that, going to your local area, whether it's this is a humbling act, because people will look at like as an American, right? I admit that when I hear someone with like an accent, any accent from like anywhere that isn't America, I'm like, wow, they're so cool, they're so intelligent, So I had a good friend of mine. She lives in Ireland, and she was talking about this mentor of hers, and I was like, when I was just thinking to myself, like, wow, that sounds so damn poetic. The things she's like relating her mentor is saying, and I just kind of referred to her mentor as like kind of a bumpkin, like affectionately. But I'm over here like, like I I trained under a couple of conjure doctors who were basically hillbillies, like if you're from America and you go to that area, you're like, this is a hick, like this is an uneducated fucking creature of a person. Like you may love them dearly, but you're over here like, they're not splitting the atom anytime soon, but they can do witchcraft, they can do fucking magic, but they look at it as a craft, like there's a physicality to it as opposed to like an intellectualizing of it. You know, like you'll go to train with them, and they'll give you shit that's a lot like tantra, where they'll be like, all right, well, they'll hand you something and be like, know this thing, Like understand how it smells, how it tastes, how it looks, how it feels. It could be like a skeleton key or something, and then rebuild it in your mind. Teaching you visualization exercises, right? Or they'll teach you how to move force. Like a lot of Appalachian conjure workers will be called power doctors or moon doctors. You know, they doctor the force, they doctor the power. They may not even refer to it as magic, but they'll tell you these things where it's like, you know, move the power, you know, or they'll tell you like pick up a stone from someone's driveway if you wanna harm them. And this is an exercise that anyone can do. Pick up a stone, you go home with that stone, and you look at that stone and you fill your mind with hate. You can do this with any quality, obviously. This is what I was taught. You fill your mind with fucking hate, and then you feel it and you feel it and you feel it and you feel it, and then you send it into the stone, either through your body, up your arm, or just through your eye. And you do that every day for 20 minutes a day for a whole lunar cycle, and you replace the stone. The curse should hit. It should be effective. But they'll give you exercises like that, and that's kind of a ubiquitous thing because I've trained with people who are not American in origin, you know, and the moving of force and power, the understanding of the reality of that is, I think, a crucial component. And I think that cultivation exercises help with that. To that same end, I think that functional animism is another pillar of magic that people don't dive deep enough into. Because it's one thing to say, um, you know, the rowan tree has a spirit, but there's nothing to say the number 13 has a spirit. Another thing in Conjure in America is you will make pact with an unlucky thing. Like 13, she's my number. She's good to me, is what you'll hear. You know, and then you'll wear like, you know, the number 13 on a ring or a belt buckle or something, very, very like traditional hoodoo man kind of thing. But in that way, anytime the number 13 appears, you can conjure it. You can use that magic. And that magic's only lucky for you because it siphons the luck of other people. And that is also a very witchcrafty kind of thing where you will move forces around luck and beauty and health and intelligence. I've also referred to it, I heard it referred to by an African acquaintance of mine as stealing someone's stars to move qualities from them to either yourself or other people. But that functional animism, like I said, like if you make a conjure lamp, it's not just the stuff you put in the lamp that has spirits. It's the oil, it's the wick, it's the fire, it's the nimbus of light, it's the vessel itself. You know, like people will tell you when you prepare a mojo hand, the bag is the flesh. The ingredients are the organs. You know, the psalms you pray into it is the soul. It's the same with anything, but it's the functional animism and knowing how to make it work. You know, because like another thing, and this is like a thing you'll hear from like a lot of older root doctors and shit in America is like, can you do magic without fire? Because in the age of like Instagram and Amazon, especially in North America, it's very popular to see like candle spells. And again, I love candle magic. Shit works. You know, you don't want someone who's good at magic burning a candle on you if they don't like you. But you know, can you do it without it? Has it become a crutch for you? Can you move the power without fire? Because I had one mentor who she was Protestant by God, and candles were something that was either Catholics used or they were only in churches. And as someone who grew up, because my mother's people are Catholic, they're like evil magic Catholic, but they're, you know, but she would say like, you know, she wouldn't do that, but she would take earth from places, make clay out of it, you know what I mean, and conjure the earth because for her it was a biblical thing. It was like Adam was made of clay. I can make the clay pop it because I am like God and I can breathe into things. And the functional animism of everything I believe has a spirit. I am composed of multiple spirits. The part of me that loves is a different spirit than the part of me that hates, but they're sisters, is how she would refer to it. And when you come to understand these are the building blocks of living a life that is truly magical, being magic as opposed to just doing it, and often not spoken about or written about, really.
That's really fascinating. I think you're sharing some fantastic wisdom here. Uh, you know, it's stuff that you don't really get from the whole kind of social media, pop culture, kind of like, you know, they call it witch talk. Witch talk.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'm too old to be on TikTok. I don't know anything about it.
I'm not on TikTok myself
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
I probably should be. I'd probably make more money, but I'm not.
Yeah. um, I find that really interesting. That idea of those kind of details of moving the force along, moving the force around. Um, and in terms of kind of like the types of exercises that one would do to kind of develop and kind of build that capability, like what is that based in? Is that based in kind of energy work or developing psychic powers or visualization? Like, what's the
Honestly,
foundation of that?
so it'll depend on like who your teacher is,
Right.
but in my opinion, much like working out or physical exercise of any kind, it's better that you do something and stick to it than getting too in your head about collecting the theories of a bunch of other things. So to that end, there are books out there. There's a book called The Mentalist's Handbook by Clint Marsh, who probably owes me 10% of his sales on that book because I sing that thing's praises all day because it's one of the few ones that gives you like a lot of exercises that'll like directly produce results with this stuff. But I mean, psychic training, energy work, tantra. One thing that I was always taught was the idea of moving your consciousness around, which you see in tantric training, where it's like move your consciousness to your heart center. So you like pretend that you're looking out of your chest, or you move your sense of awareness here. But also things like understanding where your mind is, like where it ends, where it begins. Another thing I learned from another teacher was this idea of taking a sort of stock of yourself, where like you'll before like a ritual or even several times a day, you'll ask yourself like, where are my thoughts? Like physically around me, where are they? Because the supposition is that etherically speaking, and also I love that like there's people are so dear about terminology used today for no fucking reason. You'll be like, I was astral projecting, and they're like, don't you mean soul flying? And I'm like, I think we both know what the fuck I mean. And I meant I was doing this weird woogity woogity witchy shit at the Sabbath. You know, you were there, I was there. Yeah, I saw you. You know what I mean? Like I went to the Sabbath and I asked about you, and no one knew you. No, so, but no, like so the understanding of like where does your mind end? How big is the sphere of your mind? And also when you're working with spirits, where are they? Like, are they outside of that sphere? You know, when you find your mind wandering, is it quite literally over here? You know, what happens if you grab it and pull it? I mean, with your hands. Get physical, get visceral about it. You know, because it's they're not they're separate, but they're not, right? And so these same things are important because when you test the bounds of your etheric body, your mind, the force you can generate, this is where you start to know, you start to play, and that's kind of where it's fun in a way. You know, like a basic psychometry exercise was like, you know, you pick something up and you fascinate yourself with it, right? And it's funny because the same fascination eye can be turned to then like the witch's fascination gaze to be used on another person, right? So all of these things build and develop in and on top of each other in a greater corpus of skills because they're all useful because witchcraft had to work, historically speaking. It had to work or else you were fucked. You know what I mean? Like normally whoever you were, you know, your shit needed to work. And so, you know, this is why you got to build these skills with whatever method really works for you because this is also where it's frustrating. This is where it's idiosyncratic. We're not all going to learn the same way as well as each other in the same skill set. You know what I mean? Like for one person, like I might be like, these are the things that work for me, may not work for you at all. This is why you kind of have to trip around and figure it out. But that's kind of the benefit of the world today, because a lot of people, you know, to use a very mundane example, guitar playing. What you know, back in the era of like hair metal, most of those guitarists were self-taught, learning how to play guitar by listening to records and trying to recreate it. That took a certain kind of personality. Where I learned how to play guitar, I learned on like YouTube and tab websites and shit. A very different kind of personality, but it worked for me. I could not have done what they did generations ago in learning the instrument that I play for a hobby. Magic is not so different, right? So, you know, because sometimes this is another thing that I tell people too, you know, you may find a teacher that you just don't gel with. You may have done all the fucking work to find this cool local teacher with all the cool folkloric stuff, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna do the thing, and then you just don't like each other. And I'm not saying you have to like or agree with everything your teacher says, you don't. But you know, they may just have learned a different way from you. And in that way, this is why I tell people You know, do some training on your own. Do some eclectic shit. Buy a course from somebody. You know, figure out how you learn best, how you can produce results best. Because if you go to some teacher sight unseen and you know it ends up being kind of a wash because you guys just don't gel, then like you wasted a lot of time and effort and maybe the changing of your life for nothing. So you know that's why it's important, I think, to give these things, their to give it the college try, I guess.
No, I like that. Like, because I think you can develop quite a unique practice, like a
Hmm.
unique magic, um, because we're working to our own individual specific talents that we can develop, and some will develop faster than others rather than following a prescript syllabus, um, that you might not get as far with, so I think that's really interesting. And but it sounds like the foundation that you got through your folks gave you a very good bedrock and confidence to kind of go off in the various different areas that you wanted to experiment with. Like you
Oh
felt
yeah.
like you had an inner confidence in your own magic ability from the outset, where I think sometimes it's very easy for newbies to be like, "Oh my god, oh wow, the teacher's so amazing," and end up kind of like sometimes not picking the right teacher because they lack, what's the word I'm looking for? They lack discrimination because they're a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a thing too. I think that for me a bigger factor even than just the self-confidence was being shown just how real magic was.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah,
So
so
when I would seek people out, because I have a very strong memory of being 18 years old and like freshly like out of high school era, and talking to other occultists and running into the worst holdovers of like 90s chaos magic at the time. The spirits aren't real and this isn't real and it's all in your head. And my entire lived experience at that point was contrary to that. And I remember being not even no, I was so confused I couldn't even be mad. Like it's a visceral fucking memory for me. But I remember looking at this dude and being just incredulous, just how can you believe that? Like, why? I remember asking him, like, why would you do this if you don't think it's real? Because in my mind, I'm over here thinking I would never do any of this if I didn't know it was real. Like the lengths you go to, the fasting for Solomonic magic, for example, the all the sneaky tricks for conjure and witchcraft and whatnot, all the weird visionary experiences you have, all the divinations you do. Why would you live that way if you didn't know? If you couldn't bank on it? And to that same end, I mean, it was also the thing that made me willing to look at certain teachers over the course of my life and go, you don't believe in this enough. You believe in it okay, but you don't believe in it enough. And actually, you're starting to see in, I guess, the discourse a bit of that, where some teachers will say pretty publicly, they'll do a double take, right? Where they'll be like, well, magic can produce amazing results and it can do all this. But really, you should be focused on the more mundane benefits in your life about that. And I don't disagree, but I don't agree either. I think there don't need to be that separate. Because I mean, at the end of the day, if you're gonna do this, you might as well do this. Like you might as well really commit to it and have the best results that you can, make the biggest asks that you can, which is another thing I harp on forever. People get annoyed that I harp on it so much. Make the biggest asks that you can. Worst case scenario, you get something half of what you wanted and it's still pretty good. Best case scenario, you really got what you wanted. And then you have to deal with the psychological difficulty of getting what you wanted. But that's another story.
yeah, that's hilarious. That the successful blowback is like,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's true.
real.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing. It fucks people when they get what they want.
Yeah, that's a whole thing I have to go through with my students. So the whole lesson on like how to keep what you want, because that's another thing too, right? You
Mm.
got someone who will go. Perfect example. Plenty of occultists have used magic to get jobs that they like could not do. Not just like, oh man, like I have a bad history, or maybe I was in prison for a couple of years, but I really can do this job, and I just need a chance. No, I'm talking about like I don't know how to do this. I got no idea how to do this, but I got the job because my magic slapped. And then they get fired from that job within 3 weeks because you didn't know how to do the job at all. Like at all. And to the point where that hiring manager has probably also been fired because that happens. I mean that's real. Or how many 2-month relationships result with from a love spell where the person wakes up one day and they're like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why am I with you? You don't even live with your parents. You live with my parents. like, oh man, just the absolute clownishness of it all. I love it, but it's some shit.
That's really funny. And I get it. Like, what's the way for people to navigate that? I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's those kind of like they're like the schoolboy mistakes.
Sure.
You're not precise enough in something. You kind of get what you've asked for, but you also get this kind of like trailer on the back of it that's a fucking bag of shit that you weren't specific enough or whatever that might be, whatever way you're crafting your magic. But
Oh,
what's
sure. I mean, well, there's troubleshooting you got to do.
yeah, okay, that's what
It's why, I'm, it's why I'm a big fan of divination alongside this, because there's this idea that like people will hamper themselves with divination proper if like your divination will always tell you not to approach things, and I don't like that idea. I was taught to approach divination in a way that like you want to get a yes answer. So for example, just a scenario, I want this kind of relationship partner. You're like, I'm single, ready to mingle, I'm out here, I'm living my life, I want this kind of chick. All right, cards, can I get this kind of chick? Absolutely not. Under no circumstances can you get that kind of chick mundanely. Like you are fuck ugly. You smell terrible. You're not even funny. You were funny looking, but like you're not even funny. But like so you're like, all right, well, okay, what kind of magic do I got to do? If I do this folk magic spell, this like moving candle spell to get her closer to me, will that work? No, won't work. Not enough. Like not enough. So not powerful enough. I need more magic. Yeah, you need more magic. Okay, cool. But then you have to say, what happens if I summon a whole demon to bring me this kind of chick? Now, just keep in mind that nothing is static. Everything has velocity at all times. Our solar system is hurtling through the universe, right? Magic flavors and enhances the velocity of whatever it brings. So if you pull some demon day shit and you're like, I want this chick with some demon shit, she's gonna be on some demon time. You know what I'm saying? Like she's gonna be feisty and aggressive and possibly insane. So you're gonna have to be like, okay, cards, what do I got to worry about? Well, she'll be feisty, aggressive, and possibly insane. So then you call that spirit and you're like, hey, can you bring me all this but not feisty, not aggressive, and not insane? Demon's like, well, I can do not insane, but she's gonna be feisty and aggressive. And you're like, well, okay, I can handle that, but how feisty and aggressive are we gonna get? This is where like true spirit diplomacy comes in, talking to your spirits. Now, Alex, I hear people ask, I can't talk to spirits and see them. Yes, you can. You could do divination. You can ask them to speak through your cards. It's not the funnest or the sexiest kind of thing ever, but it's reliable. It's a lexicon that and also I'm a big fan of the yes or no's, pendulum, dice, whatever you got to do to ask your 20 questions. Do it and do it every step of the way to fine tune it, because eventually the ideal goal is to whittle your task down to, yes, this is the right spell, this is the right result, this will have it happen. And then after that is when you have to deal with the psychology of actually getting what you want. In case of the partner, it's like literally waking up next to them while they're still asleep and looking at them and be like, holy shit, this fucking worked. What am I gonna do? Like, because people have that, the partner, the job, I mean, anything long lasting and big, like a vast kind of thing in your life that changes a trajectory, that scares the shit out of people because you get this imposter syndrome. And in a way, it's kind of a deserved imposter syndrome for a lot of us because, like, Magic helps you cheat the game. I have no scruples about that personally. I don't think anybody should. But like, it is an unfair advantage, and you are exploiting it to get what you want. So, you need to come to whoever you are, you need to come to terms with that and accept the fact that, like, the thing I always say, another Alex quote that I say, and anyone who likes me, anyone who knows me, listens to this, you're gonna know what I'm gonna say. The things you want are real. They exist. Somebody is going to get them. It might as well be you. Because if you have magic and you're any good and you don't get them, that means you chose not to get them. You handed what you wanted. You handed your dreams to somebody else. And if you're willing to go to the crossroads at midnight, cemetery at 3 a.m., goetic circle after 3, 7, 9 days of fasting, you're willing to sit in a witch's hut in another country to learn how to like conjure things out of a fire, you should be willing to go get what you want. You should, courage in all things is a staple of what it is we do and what it is we hope to be. We're not perfect, but you can be bold, and you should be.
I think that's a very positive outlook on things.
I try to be, man. I mean, it's the coolest shit in the world we get to do. Why shouldn't you be positive about it?
Yeah, no, that is very true. And I like as well that you're kind of you're unapologetic for that's. I think that's a positive trait. There's a lot of kind of like, I think, hand wringing that probably saps the energy out of people's magic, to be honest.
Well, not just that. Honestly, hypocrisy, I hate the worst.
Mhm.
Thing is, the people, and I, man, doing this shit for a living, I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day who's also a professional in the field, and she was saying, man, you know what I learned about doing this for a living? And I said, what's that? And she goes, no one's above it. No one's above a damn thing. People who come to you in private under the cover of darkness or the cover of, the DMs, you know what I mean, will ask you for the filthiest, nastiest, dirtiest, most awful shit you would never do. But they're coming to the magic person. And that's why you have to be, one, unapologetic, but two, just to be honest, because the people out there, and it's always the ones who look the squeaky cleanest, they have the worst skeletons in their closet. An old teacher of mine always used to say, everyone who conjures got something going on. We all have something we're doing in the background, in the shadows, some spell we're casting, some sneaky horseshit we're about to do. And for the most kind of us, it's not even that sneaky. It might be a prosperity altar that you're keeping going. There's still something going on. It might be a weekly road opener you do, and you should be doing a road opener every week to make your magic stronger and to bring yourself the right teachers, the right information, everything. That's a free tip. Do a road opener every fucking week to make your life awesome. Yeah, you will thank me in 3 months. I swear to God. But that's the thing. I mean, you got to be honest because we're people. We're humans. We are flawed creatures who live in the world. And I don't know if you've seen most occultists, but most of us are fucking creatures. All right, like absolute fucking cretins. Like, and you know what? It is what it is. I number myself among the gremlins here. Like it is what it is. But that's why you got to be unapologetic. And the reason why I try to be unapologetic is to both humanize myself, give people who listen to me or talk to me permission to humanize themselves, and to rehumanize the practice of the other than human witchcraft that we do. Because that's the truth of it. You can't sit there and virtue signal, and that is what it is, inflammatory term used intentionally, and go, I would never, I'm so good. You are 3 days with no food in the dark away from cannibalism. Any motherfucking one of you. You are, and okay, so cool. I see this all the time. Oh, I would never cast a love spell, says the hottest woman you've ever seen. Oh, sure you wouldn't. Now. But give yourself 2 years of touch starvation and a string of bad relationships. You're going to come to me just like your colleagues do in the shadow of the DMs, saying, "Well, it's different for me, Alex, because I'm different, and the only reason I'm asking for this thing that I would never do is because I'm different." I'm like, I've seen it all. I've seen it all. And you know how you stop? You know how you prevent yourself from being that fucking person? You're honest from the get go.
Right.
You go, I could be.
Right.
I could be reduced that way. And then you ask yourself, what ought I do to never be reduced that way? And then you have the clean win.
Mm.
Then you can actually have all the good shit and not get it in a dirty fashion if that really fucks with you that deeply. And I'm not saying it's bad if it does or doesn't.
Yeah.
But this thing, the people who soar the highest in public fall the deepest in private. I have seen it time and again.
Mm.
Anyone in this industry will tell you if you ask them. They got stories. Like, it's a thing. So you have to be unapologetic because magic will never apologize to you.
Right. That's fascinating. Um, I I can only imagine what your DMs look like.
Oh, they're hilarious. They're the price of admission, man. They're great.
The people can't hear me here because I got my microphone turned off most of the time, but I've been laughing all the way through this. This is fucking hysterical. Um, I got to ask. I mean, obviously, names, no identifiers, but like, is like, do you just get like people asking you for like get me back with my ex
Oh
or
yeah,
split
sure.
that couple up, all that? I mean, that's your bread and butter, right? Yeah, that kind of
See,
stuff.
that's what you get asked for a lot. That's actually not most of what I agree to do.
Right.
Most of what I agree to do is spells that will bring you a new lover, brand new, who will actually like you. Spells that will, because we live in a world of billions, because there's certain things about magical techniques and technology that I think some of them are outmoded. And I personally believe that while I am not that person who will decry you as fucking Satan if you do a love spell on someone, I can understand in theory why you would. I mean, there was certainly a teenage Alex who didn't want to be a virgin, so he decided he wasn't gonna be with magic. I tell that story to everyone because it gauges who the fuck I'm talking to. Because every time I talk to like anyone who gets it, they're like, "Yeah, bro, I did on the same shit." Or sometimes if they did be doing magic for a while, they're like, "Yep, me too. Yep, I clapped some cheeks, my dude." And that was the business, right? But what I get that fucks me up though are people being like, I did something really bad and I need you to make people forget. Or you got names in the occult community that come to certain people behind closed doors who are like, yeah, I cheated on my wife again, and I need you to make so that my reputation stays strong and so that the person with whom I cheated is just not gonna do this. And if you're the kind of person in those industries who's willing to do that, you'll make a lot of money because you can charge a lot of money because you kind of have them by the balls. But that's the thing. I mean, no, that's what you get. You get the people, especially other occultists, who because when they come to you with those problems, you're like, why can't you do this? Like you wrote these books, you're on podcasts, you're talking about, I'm this, I'm that, and I'm gonna, laud my moral judgment over all these people, and you can't fix this. Remarkable. I mean, like you have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad you said that because it's something that kind of I think about quite a lot. Where people talk about kind of having various different bits of power, yet like they look like they've got really challenging lives.
Oh,
You know,
that's
like,
real.
yeah,
That's real. And so, like, here's the thing. I'm not saying that every occultist needs to be a fucking multimillionaire,
sure, yeah,
but there is a reality of like, if your life is that busted, your magic probably sucks.
yeah,
Like, just full stop. And
mhm,
now again, there are subtleties, right? Like I've had people be like, oh, his magic probably sucks because his wife is not attractive to me. And you look at that guy and you're like, nah, but but his wife is attractive to him. That's exactly what he wanted. Because you look at her and you're like, there's a rare combination of shit going on in that particular woman who, like that's uncommon. Like it's an uncommon thing. So you have to kind of have a discerning eye about like how life works to look at that. But no, I agree. I mean, when you see people who, you know, will write all the nice books, the leather bound what's it's from, evilbookpublishing.org.co.gov.edu, like we'll have all this and they'll be on podcasts and they'll talk a big game, but it's always the ones who talk about like the mystic aspects of things. And, you know, oh, why would you ever need to do magic for trivial things in your life? And you're like, all right, bro, sounds like you can't. Sounds like a skill issue to me. Because I mean, if you were serious about being a mystic, you wouldn't be on a fucking podcast. You'd be in a gory somewhere. You'd be in a monastery somewhere. You'd be doing. That's my opinion anyway. I'm like, if you want to be a mystic, you go the whole route, or you don't do the thing.
I get that completely. Um, I've I spent some time with the Agori in India. I did a story on them about 13 years ago.
I have not been yet to India, although I intend to relatively
Yeah.
soon.
Oh, cool.
But like, yeah, I do see what I want though. See, for me, this is just a me thing. I like to get up close and like
Mhm.
psychically eyeball people and be like,
Mm.
"What do you got going on?
Yeah.
What makes this worth it to you?" Because with tantric people, especially, their internal worlds are so vast, and their astral experience is so vast
Hmm.
that like you know, you'll scry them as they meditate, and you're in a mandala yourself, like you're in their own
Wow.
internal world. You're like, this is incredible. I can see why you have no problem renouncing everything because you have everything
Wow.
so deeply in you. You know what I mean? So like, it's an experience I want to see. Like, I have
Mm.
no interest in becoming an Agori myself,
Yeah.
but because I like plumbing and shit. It's my favorite. But but it's just a really cool thing. But yeah, to that same end, I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of bullshit in the occult community when it comes to people's moral claims and whatnot, because
Mhm.
it's always people who are deeply out of fucking touch, too. People who
Right.
come from like entirely different generations, who don't know what the world is like, who aren't boots on the ground,
Mhm.
and who haven't been in decades,
Yeah.
talking about, oh, you shouldn't use magic for this, and this is shaming the magic and insulting the spirits of this thing. Whereas again, if you go truly boots on the ground, folk magic, deep witchcraft, to other cultures, shit, I had a mentor a long time ago who told me, and I do not do this, listeners, but she was like, you should do a love spell on everyone you find attractive, period. Just like the meanest love spell you can on everyone you find attractive. And I was like, fucking why? And she's like, I don't know. I like having options. Do you not like options? I mean, it was that simple because they live that magic that
Yeah.
viscerally. It kind of goes full circle in that way. It isn't this
Mm.
like lofty mystical thing where it's like, this is my mundane life and this is my spirit room. And as someone who has a spirit room, like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, the thing is though, like that, I don't understand why there are people make those kind of differentiations. Because for me, like, okay, like one might be a magical act, one might be a mundane act, but they both go towards the same goal. So if I do a magical spell, I want that job, right? I want that job, and I'm going to conjure towards that. At the same time, if I get my resume, curriculum vitae for those listening in Europe, if I get my resume and I rework that, right, to the finest work of fiction that is going to
mhm,
get me as close as I can to that role,
right.
what's the fucking difference?
That's exactly the
The
question, though. That's
intention's the
exactly the
same.
question you
Yeah.
should be asking, though, all the time. Because at the same time, there are so many subtle acts of magic even within all this, right? Like, and I'm not even being hyperbolic when I
Yeah.
say this. See, you have some people who be like, "Oh, storytelling is magic," and what they mean is like, "I'm inspired by this." But when I'm like, "Storytelling is fucking magic," what I mean is you can cast spells that do stuff with
Yeah.
this. So your resume, I mean, there is magic in stuff that tells outright fucking lies if you enchant it well enough, because then it'll become true in your target's mind
Mhm.
for this. So like, yeah. But when I see people who try to separate these things into these big lofty goals, I see people who, one of two things: either they haven't had much success with magic manifesting results in their life, and it's
Mhm.
cope, like it's
Yeah.
just straight copium. Uh, with them, trying to over intellectualize it, or it comes from a sort of religious holdover
Yeah.
where they put their power in, you know, a higher power that clearly has no vested interest in them. It's one of the reasons why, like, as someone who does saint magic among other kinds of magic, I mean, there's plenty of heretical stuff from a religious perspective that I do across the board. But like, the saint gets shit done. Praying to God, maybe not. You know what I mean? The Psalms all have spirits associated with them. Praying directly to Jesus, maybe not. You know what I mean? Like, it's this thing. Like, it goes against prosperity gospel. It's like, no, I'm going to bury Saint Expedite in the ground upside down if I don't get what I want fast because he doesn't like being upside down. You know what I mean? And just a bunch of other things in this. I mean, I see people, for example, who are really big into like holdovers from Tibetan Buddhism. Um, the way it has trickled into like Western lodge occultism, where they'll be like, you should focus always on the path of return and cultivating yourself so that you can crystallize your consciousness after death and nothing else matters. And I'm like, nothing else would matter if indeed you were a monk in a monastery that was built by a slave caste, like in Tibet, where like, you know, all your doors and shit are built slanted so that when the slave caste resurrects as zombie vampires, they can't get in. You know, funny thing, that fascinating, but like you hear that and you're like, that doesn't make sense for the world. Like, you can do both. You can prepare for you can eschatologically prepare for everything that comes hereafter with the right practices and still live a great life. You can have both. There's nothing that says you can't. But the people who will only focus on one to the exclusion of the other, and again, I'm also not saying that you can't get lost in the sauce. Plenty of us do. I have. There are plenty of occultists who wake up one day and they realize that the last 5 years of their life have been hedonism magic and nothing else. Like, even ignoring their spirits, ignoring these amazing mystical experiences we have, the wonder that we chase, which should never leave you. You can get lost in the sauce, and you shouldn't either. But honestly, I'd rather get lost in the sauce than have no sauce at all, because a man with no sauce is surely lost.
That might be the title for this show.
Listen, do it. I am the sauce boss. All right, like, that's it.
Well, listen, Alexander, it's been a really, really fun chatting to you. You've really made me laugh.
Likewise, man. I'm glad.
Yeah,
I'm glad I can be entertaining as well as informative.
Yes, well, exactly. Informative as well, I should add. But if people want to follow you, if they want to get slide into your DMs with some horrendous request, what's the best way for them to do so, and equally find your work online?
Yeah, you got to find me on Instagram at the Hex Doctor, _Hex Doctor. And you can also find me on the Practical Occult website, practicaloccult.com. Allison is the one who makes the amulets. I'm the one who does the classes. So people get confused about that. Like no, she's the one behind all the amulets. Like, don't think I do that. I could never. But yeah, no, that's where you got to find me. And also a special prize to the one who slides into the DMs with the most upsetting thing. Like, if you can actually get me to clutch my pearls, I'll give you something free. I promise. Because it's hard by this point. I want to feel alive again. You know what I mean?
I need to feel something.
I do.
Brilliant. Well, it's been fantastic chatting to you. Thanks for coming on Spirit Books.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, Alexander. What a fascinating show. I hope you all got something from that. Do check out the show notes if you want to find out more about Alex's work. Right, that's it from me. I'm Dara Mason, and you've been listening to The Spirit Box. Take care and goodbye.